This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
وصل إلى طهران 9 إيرانيين بينهم دبلوماسيان.
9 Iranians, including 2 diplomats, arrived in Tehran. The American occupation forces released them after detaining them for 10 months in Iraq. The released Iranian nationals included 2 diplomats, Musa Jeti and Hamad Reda Askari, who were working for the Iranian embassy in Erbil, in addition to 7 other pilgrims. They told Al-Alam television that they were subjected to harsh psychological torture at the hands of the American occupation forces in Iraq. They said that they did not do anything illegal in Iraq, which was also confirmed by a report released by the occupation forces. Meanwhile, the Iranian ambassador in Iraq, Hassan Khatami, said that his country is working with the Iraqi government to release 25 other Iranians who remain detained in Iraq by the American army. Ordinary Iraqis expressed their relief when they learned about the release of the 9 Iranians, including the 2 diplomats. Iraqis said that they reject the kidnapping of diplomats and others by the occupation forces in Iraq because this constitutes as a violation to Iraq's sovereignty. The 9 Iranians were released after repeated urgent calls were made by Iran and the Iraqi government to free them.
9
Iranians were released by the American occupation forces in Iraq after diplomatic meetings were continuously held between Iranian and American officials. American occupation forces had raided the Iranian embassy in Erbil and detained 2 Iranian diplomats who were working there. The 7 other detainees were pilgrims in Iraq. All 9 detainees were released and handed over to the Iranian embassy in Baghdad.
It
is about sovereignty. The detainment of Iranian diplomats is not justifiable under any circumstances. The Iraqi government has to approve such actions. The Iraqi government worked hard to release the Iranians, who were proven innocent of all accusations that were made against them. There are 3 points that show that Iran has a positive role in Iraq.
The 9 Iranians were freed after being detained for 10 months in Iraq. They returned to Iran in what some described as a quick process, but that did not stop it from being the main topic of conversation in Iraqi streets. Ordinary Iraqis condemned the detainment of the Iranians by the American occupation forces because of its negative impact on Iraq's relationship with its neighbors.
As Iraqis, we reject any kind of detainment by the Americans, regardless of whether the detainees are tourists or diplomats in Iraq.
We do not accept the detainment of anyone from any nationality, because anyone who comes to Iraq is our guest. They are Muslims like us. It does not make a difference if they are Saudis or Iranians.
Diplomacy was the way this tense issue was resolved. Although the detainment of the Iranians in Iraq created tense relations between the Americans and the Iranians, the detainees were released to Iran today. This new step could open the door for other issues to be resolved if inflexibility is replaced with diplomacy. From the Iraqi capital of Baghdad, Haydar Qasim, Al-Alam.
من العاصمة العراقية بغداد حيدر قاسم العالم.
The Israeli public radio reported that Israel and the United States agreed to form 2 working committees on the Iranian nuclear file. Discussing another nuclear file, the Israeli Minister of Strategic Affairs, Avigdor Lieberman, said that Egypt's decision to use nuclear reactors to generate power represents an apocalyptic scenario for Israel.
هذه صور من المفاعل النووي الإسرائيلي في ديمونا. إسرائيل لم تعترف يوما بامتلاكها للسلاح النووي.
This is the Israeli nuclear reactor in Dimona. Although Israel never admitted to having nuclear weapons, it has implied it. Military experts estimate that Israel has over 100 nuclear warheads. Israel is the only country in the Middle East that did not sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Nevertheless, the leaders of Israel do not hesitate when making statements with warnings, threats, and fear regarding one of the countries in the region having a nuclear program. Israeli Minister of Strategic Affairs Avigdor Lieberman, a right-wing extremist, described Cairo's announcement to revive its peaceful nuclear program as presenting a catastrophe for Israel. Lieberman's statements also referred to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, saying that Egypt and Saudi Arabia's declarations to begin nuclear programs should be taken seriously. But Israel's fear spreads further, where Tel Aviv is also concerned with the Pakistani nuclear program in light of that country's unstable condition. Another chapter in the nuclear file includes the Turkish parliament's approval to build nuclear reactors. All of these developments come amidst tense atmosphere surrounding the Iranian nuclear file. But Egypt's announcement was not a surprise, since 6 of the Gulf countries, including Saudi Arabia, as well as Yemen, Jordan, Libya, and Algeria, had all announced at about the same time a year ago that they want to establish a civil nuclear program. These Arab countries honestly expressed their interest in having peaceful nuclear programs, which is not prohibited by international regulations. However, Israel hides its own program and fears the programs of others. Hani Abu Aish, Al-Arabiya.
تخفي برنامجها وتخاف برامج الآخرين. هاني أبو عياش، العربية.
صعيد ذي الصلة ومن أجل مواجهة نشاطات حزب العمال باعتباره
The U.S. vowed to provide all necessary aid to Turkey to fight the PKK, which is considered a terrorist organization. The U.S. made this promise during a meeting between President George Bush and Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Monday.
وعد الرئيس الأمريكي جورج بوش بأن تقدم بلاده مزيدا من المساعدة لتركيا.
The American President George Bush promised that his country will provide Turkey with more help to fight the PKK. During a meeting with the Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan, they focused their discussion on cooperative ways to fight the Kurdish fighters in northern Iraq. Bush said that the PKK are terrorists and an enemy organization to Turkey, Free Iraq, and the United States. During the meeting, Bush offered to exchange intelligence information with Turkey in order to fight the PKK. Bush said that senior American and Turkish officials will coordinate to monitor the movement of the Kurdish fighters. The Americans offered to increase military and intelligence cooperation with Turkey in order to convince it to give up its idea of launching a military operation in northern Iraq with the aim of hitting the PKK. Erdogan is facing increasing internal pressure to launch a wide-scale military operation, especially after the PKK attacks, which killed 40 Turkish soldiers last month. The Turkish Prime Minister said that he had hoped that the meeting with Bush would persuade the United States to take tangible steps in fighting the Kurdish rebels. He also told journalists after the meeting that he was happy with the way the meeting had gone at the White House. Erdogan appeared satisfied when Bush said that the PKK is an enemy. Erdogan said, "We do not need someone to explain what enemy means." Political analysts say that the American-Turkish talks will have the largest effect on Ankara's decision whether or not to carry out the military operation in northern Iraq. Analysts also believe that Erdogan has succeeded in getting what he wanted from American and the Iraqi governments, which was reflected by their promises to fight the PKK. For the World This Week program, أسعد الربيعي العراقية.
لبرنامج العالم في أسبوع أسعد الربيعي العراقية.
It is yet to become official, but both Israeli and Palestinian diplomatic sources are saying that the Annapolis Peace Conference will begin immediately after the Thanksgiving holiday. Washington is expected to announce the date at the beginning of next week. There are reports that President George W. Bush may host an opening reception for the international delegations the evening of Sunday, November 25th, with the summit talks beginning the following morning. Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni met last night in Tel Aviv with Chief Palestinian negotiator Ahmed Correa as part of intensive efforts to conclude a joint declaration of principles ahead of the conference. According to sources in Jerusalem, the Palestinians have agreed that Israel will be required to meet its obligations under the roadmap peace proposal only after the Palestinian Authority has demonstrated real progress in its fight against terrorism. The same sources say that Palestinian negotiators have eased their demands for a timetable for statehood. And at the same time, Israeli officials say that Prime Minister Ehud Olmert is considering a freeze on settlement expansions ahead of Annapolis. Well, while it appears that the Annapolis conference will take place at the end of the month, invitations have yet to be issued, and it remains unclear who in fact will attend the much-anticipated parley. IBA's Eli Wogelenter spoke with Dr. Gerald Steinberg of the Besa Center about what we can expect.
The main question is whether the Saudis at a high level will show up and endorse some sort of a peace process. The details are not going to be very ambiguous at this Annapolis conference from all we know. The question is, are we going to have a photo op of Olmert and Abbas? We can do that here in Jerusalem. Are we going to also have the Saudi foreign minister or a high-level, serious Saudi minister standing there, as well as other leaders of the Arab countries to say we endorse a two-state solution, we endorse compromise? The Palestinians are going to have to look at their claims, Palestinian refugee claims, the claims on Jerusalem. We want to see this moving forward towards compromise. I think right now it doesn't look like the Saudis and other major Arab leaders are going to show up. That's a disaster. That's a failure. Even if Olmert and Abbas come up with some sort of a framework statement, without having broad Arab support, this whole peace initiative, the Arab League Peace Initiative, becomes just another piece of paper.
So what are we going to do if no one shows up except Israel and the Palestinians and the United States and the quartet?
We'll probably see Egyptian high-level official, perhaps Egyptian foreign minister, Jordanian, because we have diplomatic relations and peace treaties, perhaps a couple of Gulf states like Qatar, but the real important ones, starting with Saudi Arabia, there are lots of questions there. The countries that have always been standing on the outside of any kind of peace effort and whose support is absolutely necessary to get the Palestinians to move in the right directions, and tell Israelis that 60 years or 80 years, depending on how you want to count it, of conflict, of violence, of hatred is over. You've got to have certainly the Saudis, the ideologists, the Muslim source of authority come up and say, this is something that we support completely.
So Prime Minister Olmert saying this week that he really hopes Syria also shows up is really just political talk, is it not?
Prime Minister Olmert is very diplomatic. I think his jaw would drop if he saw Syrian officials show up. And the question is, what would they talk about then? But it's certainly the right thing to say. Syrians should come and endorse a peace process, but we're not ready yet. We've got so many other issues on the table. We've got to deal with all the things that Syria is doing in Lebanon, supporting Hamas, building nuclear reactors. Talk about peace with Syria now is a little bit far off.
The last time we had this kind of a summit was in July 2000, where the United States tried to push Israelis and Palestinians toward an agreement, Barak and Arafat, and the result was Intifada 2. Can we expect that if this summit also fails, we're going to have Intifada 3?
Arafat was clearly planning this terror campaign that broke out at the end of 2000 or the middle of 2001, depending on how you start counting it. It was not an intifada, it wasn't a spontaneous uprising. The Palestinians now, to repeat something like that, would have a lot more difficulty. They had all of the Oslo period to prepare this, certainly the last 2 or 3 years, to prepare for all the suicide bombings. It would be much more difficult. Israel is much more in a place throughout the areas of the Palestinian Authority, except for Gaza, to deal with that. So that's unlikely.
So the Palestinians may not be able to conduct any kind of intifada, but won't Hamas be looking to have some kind of terror war campaign against Israel?
Hamas and Fatah are engaged in a conflict. Hamas will do what they can anyway. They're continually trying to launch terror attacks. We may see a few more successes, a greater impact of their attempts, which would be tragic, but we will not have the scale, anywhere near the scale of the terror campaign under Arafat. And there's no leader. There's no Palestinian-like leader like Arafat to be able to push and maintain that type of a campaign. So I think we have to take those kinds of threats with a certain level of skepticism.
Saudi Arabia's King Abdullah has arrived in Turkey on the last leg of his extended European tour. It's the King's second visit in less than 18 months. And Stephen Cole in our European News Centre, a sign of Turkey's growing ties with the oil-rich kingdom. Why is that?
Well, I think it is a sign, David. It's also pointing towards Turkey's growing influence in the Middle East in general. The Middle East peace process is on the agenda, so too is Iraq. Well, of course, Turkey has tens of thousands of troops along its border with that country because of the presence of Kurdish fighters there. And Mike Hanna explains more.
The Saudi king is feted in Ankara, his host, the Turkish President Abdullah Gül. This evidence of the ever-growing ties between Turkey and Saudi Arabia, the value of trade between the two countries now well over $3 billion a year. King Abdullah is presented with a Medal of State, an honour reserved for statesmen who promoted friendly ties between their countries and Turkey. Some in opposition claiming the government's decision to award the medal evidence of what they call its Islamic agenda. This vehemently denied by the Erdogan administration, which points to the coming visit by the Israeli president as proof of its commitment to a secular nation. The Saudi king has been on an extended European tour, his first stop in Britain, where he had intense talks on a number of Middle Eastern issues. Then on to Germany, and a visit to the Brandenburg Gate accompanied by the mayor of Berlin, followed by a meeting with the German chancellor. The visit of the Saudi king here is a very important event for us, says Angela Merkel.
He is a very important player in a region, which should be marked by peace processes, but sadly is marked by many conflicts.
The fact that Turkey is included in the king's itinerary, a sign of this nation's growing influence in Middle Eastern affairs. King Abdullah is the first in a series of important visitors to Turkey in coming days. The Israeli President Shimon Peres arrived Saturday, to be followed by his Palestinian counterpart Mahmoud Abbas. In an unprecedented move, Palestinian and Israeli will address the Turkish parliament on Monday, striking evidence of Turkey's ability to provide neutrality in a region deeply divided.
And Mike joins us live now from Istanbul. Mike, do you get a sense that something might be moving, something substantial perhaps, in the Middle East peace process?
Well, Stephen, one must point out that Saudi Arabia was the drafter of a peace proposal about 5 years ago, which the Arab League in particular sees as the viable document to achieve an Israeli-Palestinian peace. It has not been on the table, but there's been much discussion about it recently. So certainly Saudi is a very important player in this process, and all parties looking for greater Arab involvement in the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. Arab nations have been reluctant to get involved unless core issues are discussed, rather than what they see as photo opportunity meetings. The fact that the Palestinian president and the Israeli president are there, very significant. But there's not going to be any real negotiations of a substantive nature at this point. What the impact of this meeting is very symbolic. It is demonstrating that Turkey is able to bring together these major players within this ongoing dispute. It is able to serve as a neutral venue, as a neutral platform, and this is a very, very important piece of symbolism in a process where there have been very few symbols indeed, Stephen.
Mike, as an ally of Israel, is Turkey, do you think, a credible mediator?
Well, very much so, because Turkey's influence in the Arab world generally has been growing substantially in recent years, evidenced by the repeated visits here of the Saudi king. And certainly it has got very good relations with Israel, the only Muslim state in the world that does indeed do so. But this is a very important fact, is that Turkey, by its specific nature, balanced as it is between East and West, is able to play a role within this process that no other nation can. It does have the ear of the most powerful nation in the West, as evidenced by the Prime Minister's visit to the US earlier in the week. It does have the ear of very important players on the Arab side. So certainly it is a very, very clear and possible mediator within this process, the type of mediator that actually hasn't been in place in the years to date.
Mike Hanna in Istanbul. Thanks, Mike.
In Iraq, the head of police in Karbala accused Al-Mahdi army militia under Muqtada al-Sadr of committing hundreds of assassinations under the pretext of Islamic law, which preaches fairness and prohibits the abominable. But Jawad al-Hasnawi, the deputy governor of Karbala, denied these charges and in turn accused the security forces of killing 2 families.
من يقتل من في محافظة كربلاء على قدر ما يتعلق
Who kills in Karbala? According to security forces in the district, those killing the civilians are the Al-Mahdi army militia.
وعلى قدر ما يتعلق الأمر بميليشيا جيش المهدي فإن من يقتل المدنيين.
But according to the Al-Mahdi militia, those killing civilians are the security forces themselves, with external support.
لقيادة شرطة كربلاء مجموعة من العمليات التي قامت بها ميليشيا جيش.
The latest report by the head of police in Karbala lists a collection of Al-Mahdi militia operations, which include killing over 600 Iraqis, including 70 women, killing 62 policemen, including 12 officers, carrying out an estimated 40 robberies in the district, and planting several roadside bombs. The report also accused the Al-Mahdi army militia of committing over 130 abductions and numerous violations to human rights. The report concluded that the Al-Mahdi army militia is equivalent to the Taliban.
تضاهي نظام طالبان. هذه الحملة والأرقام طفت على السطح.
This report surfaced violently after the events of late last August on the Shiite celebration of the birth of Imam al-Mahdi. Clashes erupted between armed groups and the police, leaving hundreds dead and injured. The Iraqi Prime Minister intervened and quickly went to Karbala, which was followed by an unprecedented arrest campaign. The Sadr movement says that they have been falsely blamed and targeted.
يقول التيار الصدري إنها تستهدفهم بالأساس.
بدأت التصفية للتيار الصدري بشكل عام.
They began getting rid of the Sadr movement specifically and Arab tribes in the district generally. They piled accusations against the Sadr movement, saying that they instigated the violence, but the Sadr movement is innocent of these accusations. We have documents, evidence, and tapes that show that these operations were executed by armed groups associated with the Al-Quds force. These groups carried out these operations, and their snipers targeted civilians from the rooftops. Some of these snipers were Iranian nationals.
وهذه القناصة كانت بعضها أحد القناصين الإيراني الجنسي.
وقال جواد الحسناوي وهو نائب.
During a meeting between Jawad al-Hasnawi, the deputy governor of the Karbala district, and the Iraqi vice president Tariq al-Hashimi, al-Hasnawi said that the Sadr movement is being attacked for its Arabism. He also said that a few days ago the police killed an entire family, including the children, because it belonged to the al-Sadr movement. He added that the law is biased and politically motivated.
مسيس حسب وصفه.
Oil prices have inched closer to an all-time high of $100. Who is reaping the profits? And what is the King of Saudi Arabia doing in Europe? The answers to these questions and more on Link TV's Mosaic Intelligence Report.
The price of a barrel of oil has more than quadrupled since the fall of Baghdad in 2002. This week, oil prices have inched closer to an all-time high of $100 a barrel before retreating. The fall in the US dollar, high demand for winter fuel supplies in the Northern Hemisphere, and developing countries like China have led to the rise, experts say. Except for Iraq, oil-producing countries have become richer and more powerful. Iraq, which used to produce close to 3.5 million barrels of oil per day under the rule of Saddam Hussein, finds itself in the humiliating position of importing oil products such as gasoline, diesel, and fuel oils.
The working conditions are extremely poor. We still have to worry about power outages. There's even a shortage of water.
It is only able to export an average of about 1 million to 1.3 million barrels of crude oil per day. And that's on good days when something is not ablaze. And who is benefiting from this demise? No country more than Saudi Arabia. I couldn't help but notice King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia dining with Queen Elizabeth II at Buckingham Palace. The king couldn't have asked for a better way to remind the Western world of his country's importance than last week's record oil price. Although the king's trip to European countries was marketed in the media as a tour to promote peace in the Middle East, the real purpose behind the trip was Saudi Arabia's security needs. According to the Saudi newspaper Al-Watan, security forces in Saudi Arabia have foiled a minimum of half a dozen terrorist plots against all installations in the kingdom within the past 12 months. The other unspoken purpose of the king's trip to Europe was to remind European allies that an attack on Iran by the US or Israel will only drive oil prices to a crisis level. The Saudis reportedly fear that Israel will bomb Iran's nuclear facilities unilaterally.
Your Majesty, wars and conflicts are happening in many areas of the world, and this constitutes an increasing danger which we must be wise and brave so that we prevent the deterioration of the situation.
The Times of London on Thursday quoted unnamed US military sources as saying Iran's declaration this week that the Natanz uranium enrichment plant is fully working could prove the tipping point for preemptive airstrikes by Israel.
With or without international collaboration, Israel will not accept to live under a nuclear threat, especially when the trigger is in the hands of Ahmadinejad.
Today, the Saudi monarch proposed in Germany the creation of a uranium enrichment plant in a neutral country to fulfill the peaceful nuclear needs of all the states in the Arabian Gulf region, a move seen as a desperate attempt by the Saudis to avert the region a catastrophic war that might affect their ability to control production and oil prices. I'm Jamal Dajani for the Mosaic Intelligence Report. To learn more about this program or to share your thoughts, visit us at linktv.org/mosaic. Hi again. Just a short while ago, we came to you asking for your help to keep Mosaic on the air. We needed to raise $200,000, and I'm happy to announce that we did it. No, as a matter of fact, you did it. More than 1,600 of you helped us to reach our goal, and I want to thank you on behalf of the Mosaic team right here at Link TV for your support. Stay informed, keep watching, and thank you again.
One Nation, Many Voices. The stories of Muslims in America. At work, at play, having fun. What is life like for the millions of people in this country who practice Islam?
And then finally I looked in my heart, and there he was.
Even today, Muslims still reciting
kind of in limbo.
Now's your chance to share stories of Muslims in America in our One Nation, Many Voices online film contest. We're awarding $50,000 in cash prizes divided among 6 categories: comedy, drama, documentary, animation or music, a special category for filmmakers 18 and under, plus films under 60 seconds long. You don't have to be a Muslim to enter or to vote for your favorite films online. You just have to live in the United States. The new deadline for entries is December 31st, 2007, so hurry. Check out details at linktv.org/onenation. One Nation, Many Voices. Muslims in America. Stories, not stereotypes.
Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.